Hello, students. A very good afternoon to all of you. So let us start our second part of our revision with respect to chapter 20, locomotion and movement. Okay. So before we start this session, I will launch a technical poll. Okay. Please let me know if the audio and video is clear for you. And students from YouTube, you can just put your thoughts or any concerns on the chat box. Make it fast so that we can start our session as early as possible. All right. All right, students, I'm going to end the poll now. So if you have any concerns, please let me know in the chat box and feel free to tell me. Okay, so let's get on with our session today. And today we are going to discuss the second half of our chapter, that is the skeletal system. Okay, so let's get on with it. So before we, one second, give me a second. Okay. Yeah. Before we go into the skeletal system and the details of what our skeletal system includes, right? So would it be possible for you to do all this without your skeletal system? Would you dance, move, or be rigid, or have a strong, body articulation without your skeletal system? Would your visceral organs like your heart, kidney, or lungs, okay, or your even your elementary canal, some of the parts of your elementary canal, and the major important part, that is the brain, would it be safer without the skeletal system? Not at all, right? It's not possible. So now this dancing skeleton is challenging you, okay, to answer this. Would you be able to stand straight, walk, dance, and do somersault and all of these, okay, without the help of the bones? Correct? No, you wouldn't be able to do it, any of this, without the help of the bones. So skeletal system not just help us with respect to the movement of our body, it also helps us in several things, right? For example, the moment we just think about skeletal system, we think about this. Okay, it protects our internal organs, right? It not just protects your internal organs. Okay, it provides you movement. Okay, it articulates, okay, beautiful shapes such as skull, okay, pelvic girdle, etc. Okay, and skeletal system, some of the bones are also the site for manufacturing of your blood cells, like white blood cells and red blood cells. Okay, so they have multiple functions. Okay, and they support us in many ways. And since we are talking about locomotion and movement, so let us talk very detailed, okay, in a detailed way about our skeletal system. So our skeletal system can be broadly divided into two categories. Okay, they include bones and they include cartilages. Okay, so what are bones? Bones are something that are very hard. Okay, they're very hard. They cannot bend. They're not flexible. They're rigid. Whereas cartilage, take for example, I have a cartilage in my nose. Okay, it can be moved, right? They have a cartilage in my ear, so it is flexible and I can squeeze it. I can change the direction of it. Correct? No. So this is cartilage. So why bones are rigid? Bones are hard because they are made up of calcium salts. Okay, whereas cartilage are flexible or pliable because they are made up of chondroitin salts. Okay, they're matrix, right? So so you know that the tissues of bones, they contain the matrix. The matrix is made up of calcium salts that makes them very rigid. So whereas the matrix of the cartilage is made up of chondroitin salts, that's what makes them quite flexible. Okay, so when we talk about bones, the arrangement of bones can be divided into two important skeletal systems. Okay, we can just categorize them into two major categories. One is axial skeletal system and the second one is appendicular skeletal system. So what is axial? Axis. Okay, axial skeletal system includes okay, around 80 bones which are distributed along your main axis, okay, or around the central axis. So even if you don't know, you can just imagine, okay, what would constitute my central axis, such as the skull or the rib cage, correct? No, so you already have some, or the vertebral column. So you know that they are present in the medial axis, so we call them as axial skeletal system. Whereas the appendicular skeletal system or appendicular or out of the axis, such as your forelimbs or hind limbs, okay, so they include your appendicular skeletal system. So in total, our skeletal system includes 206 bones, out of which you have 80 bones that belongs to your axial skeletal system, and then you have 126 bones that belongs to your appendicular skeletal system. All right. So let's move on and understand individually what is axial and what is appendicular skeletal system. All right. So let's start with axial skeletal system. Okay. Axial skeletal system, it includes the set of bones such as skull, the vertebral column, the sternum, and the ribs. So you can see in this image, okay, this rotating image, all the red portions, okay, that are marked, they belong to axial skeletal system. See, such as the skull, okay, the rib cage, as well as the vertebral column and the sternum or the breastbone, which is present here. Okay, they all belong to axial skeletal system. Okay, so we have to study individually about each of these, parts of the axial skeletal system. So we'll start our journey by studying about the skull, right? Skull is also known as the brain box, correct? No, without the skull, you wouldn't have the facial features that you look up to. You wouldn't be able to recognize your face if it was not for the rigidity of the skulls and how the facial features are articulated for you, right? So if you look at your skull can be divided into two important parts. One is the facial region, other one is a cranial region. So the cranial part of the skull is the responsibility of this cranial part is to protect your brain, okay, whereas the facial region articulates the bones that gives you facial features. Okay, so let us see what are those. So as I said, the skull constitutes about two sets of bones. One set of bone is called as cranial bone, the other set of bone is called as facial bones. So in total, this both cranial and facial bones are 22 bones in number. Okay, there are about 22 bones. Okay, so out of 22 bones, 8 bones are of cranial bones and the rest of the bones are of facial bones. That is 14 of them are your facial bones. Okay, so what do cranial bones? See, this small see, when we look at the skull, we think that it is one whole one rigid body. No, it's not actually true. If you see the skull, the real skull, or the skull that is made of POP, now you can see that there are quite some of the lines like this, correct? No, there are some lines like this which you can clearly observe, okay, on the surface of the skull. So what are these lines? These lines are called as sutures. Okay, so what is the role of these sutures? These sutures are meant, okay, so what do these sutures do? They attach one cranial bone to another cranial bone through a fibrocartilaginous attachment. They have a fibrocartilaginous attachment, very rigid attachment. So parts of the bones are attached together to form this structure of cranium. Understood? So they are very, very hard. Okay, they form a very hard protective layer, okay, which forms a cranium. That is the brain box where the brain is protected within that region. Whereas when you talk about the facial bone, it is made up, or the facial region is made up of 14 skeletal elements, okay, which form the frontal region of your skull. Apart from these regions, okay, apart from your facial bones as well as your cranial bones, there is one more specialized bone, okay, which is just below your lower jaw in a U-shaped bone. Okay, it is a U-shaped bone. This U-shaped bone, we call it as hyoid bone. Okay, it is just below your buccal cavity. You can feel it here. Okay, it is just below your buccal cavity and U-shaped bone. Even that is included in the skull. All right. So when we talk about our cranial bones, I told you there are 8 bones that are included in your cranial bones. They are, okay, parietal bones, temporal bones, occipital bones, sphenoid bones, and ethmoid bones. Okay, just look at the demarcation of this. So first we'll go for parietal bones. How many parietal bones do we have? Two. Okay, you just have to imagine both the sides. Okay, one piece of the parietal bone is here and the other piece of the parietal bone would be lying on the other side. Okay, temporal bone. Look at the temporal bone. Temporal bone is this piece, correct? No, if one side is in this side, the other piece would be on the other side, isn't it? So the temporal bone will be two. All right. Next one is occipital bone. How many occipital bone? Occipital bone refers to the back side of your cranium. Okay. So there are how many? One occipital bone we have. What about sphenoid bones? Sphenoid bones are here. Okay. Just above your temporal bones, right? Okay. So these sphenoid bones are two in number. And finally, we have ethmoid bones. Okay. So, okay, one second. This is your ethmoid bone. Okay. This is your ethmoid bone. So we have ethmoid bone, we have parietal bones, we have temporal bones, we have occipital bones, and we have sphenoid bones. Understood? Okay. So sorry, why we missed one more thing. That is the frontal bone. Okay, there is one frontal bone. All right, people. Fine. So next one, when it comes to facial bones are of 14 in number. Okay, let's get rid of this. Okay. So let us see what are our facial bones. Out of these 14 facial bones, okay, it includes nasal bones. How many nasal bones we have? We have two nasal bones. Okay. We have maxilla. Okay. What is maxilla? Maxilla refers to your upper jaw. How many pieces of maxilla we have? We have two pieces of maxilla. Okay. Then we have zygomatics. Okay. So what is a zygomatic bone? Zygomatic bone is the one that covers your lower portion of your eye. So that is of two, right? Two zygomatic bones are there. Then you have lacrimals, okay, lacrimal bones. Like, do you know the lacrimal gland, the tear glands? Okay, these lacrimal bones, you have two eyes, isn't it? So there are two lacrimal bones. Okay, then you have palatines. Okay, palatine bones. Okay, let's see, where is a palatine bone? Palatine palates, you know, rough palate and the smooth palate. Okay, those are the palatine bones, and there are two in number. Okay, next one, you have inferior nasal bones. Okay, just below you, the floor of your nasal cavity, that is called as inferior of the nasal bone. And mandibles are your lower jaw, which is one proper piece. Okay, that is only one. And then you have vomer bone. Okay, vomer bone is also one in number. So among all the facial bones, only one bone is movable. That is your lower jaw, or it is also called as mandible. Is it clear? So these are the different types of bones. Cranial bones are 8 and your facial bones are 14. Okay, and the names and the numbers of the bones are given very clearly here. Okay, so when we talk about other accessory bones in the skull itself, we have ear, right? Our ear contains 3 tiny bones, which we call it as ear ossicles. Okay, so the ear ossicles are very important when you we will study the structure of ear in further classes, and you will understand the importance of these ear bones. So now, for our understanding, what are the 3 ear bones that articulates our ears? Our 3 ear bones are, we have malleus, incus, and stapes. So you can see here what is the malleus. Okay, this is the this is malleus. Okay, sorry, this is malleus. Okay, this is incus. Okay, this is incus, and these are the stapes. Understood? So we have malleus, incus, and stape. This is 1, this is 2, and this is the 3rd bone. Understood? So there are 3 bones in each ear, and these 3 bones are called as ear ossicles. Okay, those are malleus, incus, and stapes. Okay, when you look at your skull region, okay, look at the skull region here. Okay, if you see the skull region, there is a hollow portion here, which is called as occipital condyle. Okay, so there is a hollow portion in the base of the skull called as occipital condyle region. So this occipital condyle region is also called as dicondyle skull. So why this region is important, occipital condyle or dicondyle skull? This is the region, if you see your vertebral column, okay, you have your vertebral column, isn't it? One second. Okay, you have your vertebral column. So in your vertebral column, you have the anterior and the posterior region. I'm talking about your, backbone, right? You have your upper portion, the anterior region and the posterior region. If you see our anterior region of your vertebral column, it is attached to the skull. Okay, it is attached to the skull. So the base of the skull, the vertebral column is attached, and that is that attachment or articulation comes through occipital condylites, or it is also called as dicondylitic skull. Did you understand? Fine. Give me a second, students. I'll just check on here in YouTube if everything is smooth. All right, let's go ahead. Okay. So this is called as dicondylitic skull. Okay. So we know that the skull's region, the reason why the skull is present is to protect our brain. Okay. It is to attach our spinal cord. Okay. And the second reason is to provide our facial characteristics. Okay. It provides a socket for our eyes. Okay. Eye sockets are there for the, it provides provision for the eyes to be, fixed there. And it provides the attachment of ears as well as your extension of your nose, dorsum nasi. Okay. So next, if you see, the other important function of the skull is for mastication of food. Correct? No, I told you the lower jaw is the only portion that helps you in movement. Correct? No, movement of your see, your only the lower jaw moves. Okay, that helps in chewing of food. Okay, or even the speech. Let's see other thing. So the next part of your axial skeleton is your vertebral column. Okay, when it comes to vertebral column, the vertebral column, it extends from the base of the skull and all the way it goes to the posterior region till your pelvic girdle. Okay, so when we look at the spinal cord, we think that the backbone is the one that provides rigidity to your back. Okay, and we also think that the backbone has a tremendous amount of stability and strength for you to lift weights. Okay, but it's actually partially right. Yes, it provides you the erect stature. That means you are a bifid. That means you can stand in two legs. Correct? No. So that is possible because of the backbone. I agree. But other thing that is wrong is your backbone is not meant for you to lift weights by applying pressure or weight on your backbone. So that might lead to an injury for your spinal cord. So why is our vertebral column even present? The vertebral column, apart from providing the structural stability or making us erectile structure, providing erectile structure, it also provides a hollow cavity in the center of the vertebral column where you have your spinal cord running. Okay, spinal cord is a bundle of nerves. Okay, very important nerves which are with respect to central nervous system. They run throughout your body. They wire throughout your body to your upper limbs, to your alimentary canals, okay, to your back, to your kidneys, or to your urinary bladder, to your hind limbs. Okay, so all your reflexes are originated because of the presence of the spinal cord. Okay, so the role of the vertebral column is to protect the spinal cord. Okay, so it supports the head. Thereby you are able to turn your neck. Correct? No, you are able to rotate your neck in a fixed axis. So that is also possible because of the presence of spinal cord. Correct? It also serves as an attachment for your ribs as well as musculature of your back. Right? So this is the role of your vertebral column. So as I said, each of our vertebral column contains a hollow central portion, which we call it as a neural canal, through which your spinal cord passes. Okay. So the first vertebral column is called as the atlas. You can see here in this picture. Okay, this particular vertebral column, give me a second. This particular vertebral column is called as the atlas vertebral column. So it is attached to your, the skull through occipital condylites. Okay, the atlas of your vertebral column is articulated. Okay, it articulates to your skull through occipital condylites. Is it clear? Next one, your vertebral column can be divided into four important regions based on where it runs. Okay, so from the first atlas vertebral column, you can count atlas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Since it is present in the cervical region, it is called as cervical vertebrae. Okay, it is called as cervical vertebrae, and vertebral column that is present within your rib cage, they are called as thoracic vertebrae. Okay, and after your rib cage, whatever is present below your rib cage. Okay, so let us see what are these. So if you look at the cervical vertebrae, the cervical vertebrae are 7 in number. The thoracic vertebrae are in 12 in number. The lumbar vertebrae are 5 in number, whereas sacral vertebrae are fused vertebrae. Okay, where sacral is 1, and then coccygeal or coccyx is 1. Okay, so they are all fused, which is made up of 5 different bones. Okay, so they belong to a category of bones called as irregular bones. Remember this: the vertebral column consists of irregular bones. Is it clear? So if you talk about the nomenclature of this vertebrae, they start from like this: C1, C2, C3, C4, right? C5, C6, C7. Okay, C6 and C7. Similarly, you have your you have your thoracic vertebrae like T1 to T12. Okay, whereas lumbar vertebrae L1 to L5. Okay, then sacral to S1 to S1 to S5. Is it clear? Okay, so this is how the vertebral column is nomenclated and identified based on their location. Is it clear, people? Okay, so after we understood the vertebral column contains about 26 bones, correct? No, among which we divided the vertebral column based on its location. All right, and we understood how many bones are present in the vertebral column and the role of the vertebral column. And the next part of this axial skeleton is your sternum and ribs. So when it comes to sternum, right, you might have heard about the sternum. Okay, hold on. We might have heard about this sternum, right? Sternum is also called as the breastbone. Okay, so it is present on the ventral axis. Okay, ventral medial axis, just above your heart. Okay, so it is a flat bone, and it provides a site of attachment for your ribs. Okay, so you can see here the red portion is called as the sternum. From 1 to 7 ribs, okay, they are connected to the sternum in the ventral region. Okay, in the frontal region, from 1 to 7, they are connected to the sternum, right? So now when we talk about the ribs belong to a category of bones called as flat bones. Okay, ribs are flat bones primarily, and dorsally, that is back. Okay, backward, they're connected to your vertebral column. Okay, and ventrally they are connected to your sternum, and this articulation to the surfaces, okay, comes because they have 2 ends. The dorsal has 2 ends, and that since they have 2 ends for the attachment, that is why they are called as bicephalic bones. Okay, they are called as bicephalic bones. Okay, so if you see the ribs, right, I told you there are 12 pairs of ribs in our body, or the rib cage. It is also called as thoracic cage, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 ribs. All right. So the role of the rib cage is to, protect your vital organs such as liver. It protects your heart. It protects your lungs. Okay. And even your food and windpipe, it gives protection. And rib cage also participates in your respiration. Okay. So, etc. So now when you talk about the, how the ribs are, present in our rib cage, the first 7 pairs of ribs, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So these ribs are attached, okay, to your vertebral column as well as to your sternum through a cartilage called as hyaline cartilage. You can see here, right? The 7 pairs of ribs, which are called as a true ribs, dorsally, that is behind, they are connected to your vertebral column, okay? That is thoracic vertebrae. I told you T1, T2, T3, T4. So these are called as thoracic vertebrae. They are attached to your thoracic vertebrae, okay? Whereas ventrally they are attached to your sternum or the breastbone here, okay? So whichever the ribs are connected to both rib cage or both the vertebral column as well as your sternum, these are called as true ribs. Remember this, okay? The true ribs are how many in number? 7 in number. What are those ribs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are called as true ribs. Is it clear? Okay. So what type of cartilage are they connected with? They are connected with hyaline cartilage. Okay. If you see the ribs, you can see this portion. Can you see this portion? Okay. This portion contains hyaline cartilage. Understood? And it articulates with the sternum. All right. But when you look at the other pairs of ribs, that is 8th, 9th, and 10th rib. If you see 8th, 9th, and 10th rib, I will see if it is possible. Okay. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I went too further. Okay. Let me stop here. Stop. It's not stopping. Anyways, hold on. We'll try from here. Okay. So if you see 8th, 9th, and 10th rib, no, See, let us say that this is your vertebral column. Okay, this is your vertebrae. Okay, this is your eighth rib. Okay, this is your seventh. Okay, so if you see the eighth rib has an attachment. Okay, through to the vertebral column. It is articulated to the vertebral column in the dorsal side, whereas in the ventral side, it goes and attaches to the seventh rib. You can see here, correct? No, the eighth rib, it is attached to the vertebral column behind, whereas when it comes to the ventral side, it is going and attaches to the seventh rib. So that is why the eighth rib and the ninth rib and the 10th rib are called as false ribs, or it is also called as vertebrochondral ribs. Okay, why they are called as vertebrochondral ribs or false rib is because these ribs, okay, they do not articulate directly with the sternum. Instead, the eighth rib is connected to the seventh rib, okay, and the ninth rib is also connected to the seventh rib, whereas the 10th rib is also connected to the seventh rib. You can see here very, very clearly, correct? No, this is the seventh rib. Okay, this is the seventh rib. You can see all of them are connected to the seventh rib like this. Got it? Okay, so that is why these ribs are called as vertebrochondral ribs, or it is also called as false ribs. Is it clear? And the last pair of ribs, you can see the 11th and the 12th rib are called as the floating ribs. Why they are called as floating ribs is because they are not connected ventrally as well. Okay, they are not connected to ventrally to any of these portions. So that is why they are called as floating ribs. Okay, so you can see here they are connected. They are not connected ventrally to any of the portions. That is why they are called as floating ribs. Is it clear? So the thoracic vertebrae, the ribs, and the sternum all together they form what? They form rib cage. Is it clear? Okay. If you have any doubts, you can just post it in the chat box. All right. So let's go ahead. So when it comes to appendicular skeletal system, okay. So we talked about axial skeletal system. So in axial skeletal system, we discussed about, see, whichever the portion that is not in the red, that includes your axial skeletal system. Okay. All the portions now that is included in your red, that includes appendicular skeletal system. Okay. So what is appendicular skeletal system? Whatever the bones that are not within the axis and central axis, these are called as appendicular. You can just imagine, if I take the center of the body, right? For my center of the body, what is present? My skull is present, my vertebral column is present, my rib cage is present, correct? No. So these are called as axial skeletal system. Whichever is not included, whereas my forelimbs and hind limbs, right? My legs and my arms are not included. So these bones which are not included in your axial skeletal system are simply called as appendicular system. And they include what? They include limbs and your girdles. Okay. What are your girdles? Your girdles are pelvic girdles and pectoral girdles. We'll talk about. So when we talk about your limbs, right? So what kind of limbs do you have? Do you have forelimbs that are your arms that are present in your arms? And do you have hind limbs that are present in your legs, right? So these are called as limbs. So when you talk about the number of bones in each limb has around how many bones? They are made up of 30 bones. Okay. So first we will talk about your forelimbs and then we will talk about your hind limbs. Is it clear? So let us talk about your hand. Okay. That is your forelimbs. So the hand bones are the hand is also called as a forelimb. Okay. The forelimb contains 30 bones. And let's see what are those. Okay. It contains the bones of your, okay, arm. Okay. Those are called as humerus, radius, and ulna. Okay. Just make a note of these bones. Okay. The bones that are near your biceps region, those are called as humerus bones. Okay. The bones that are present in your forearm region, those are called as radius and ulna. The one which is the lateral side is called as ulna. The one that is straight is called as radius bones. Clear? So we have 3 bones here, correct? No. One is humerus, other one is radius, other one is ulna. You can see here the curved one is ulna, the straight one is radius, whereas the one that is present in your biceps region, that is called as humerus region. Clear? So next, as you descend from your upper arm to your forearm, okay, you come up to your wrist. Okay, just imagine your wrist. You have wrist bones, you have palm bones, and then you have fingers. Is it clear? You have wrist bones, you have palm bones, and you have fingers. What are these wrist bones are called as? Wrist bones are called as carpals. We call these carpals. You can rotate, no? You can see these are carpals, are flat bones again. Okay. How many bones do we have in carpals? There are 8 carpal bones. Okay. So you can see here. So these bones, these flat shaped bones, which are present are called as carpals. Okay. And whichever are present in your palm region. Okay. You can see that you have palm region. Correct? No? So the bones that are present in your palm are called as metacarpal bones. Okay, how many metacarpal bones do we have? We have 5 metacarpal bones, and 5 metacarpal bones extend upward, leading to your phalanges. Okay, what are your phalanges? Your finger bones. Correct? No. So do you have finger bones? Definitely. Correct? No. That is why you're able to hold things, or grip things, or write or eat everything. So these phalanges are, how many bones do we have? We have 14 in number. Is it clear, people? So let us talk, close your eyes and just remember. You just have to tell me how many bones do we have in your forelimbs? 30 bones. Okay. What are those? We have humerus, radius, ulna. Then you have carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. Okay. How many humerus? 1. How many radius? 1. How many ulna? 1. How many wrist bones? Or how many carpals? 8. How many metacarpals? 5. How many phalanges? We have 14. Correct? No? We have 14 phalanges. Is it clear? So let's go further. Okay. So let us talk about the bones in our legs. Okay. It is also called as the hind limb. Correct? No? So there is always this question, which is the longest and the strongest bone. So the longest bone is the femur. Correct? No? Femur, or your thigh bone. Correct? No? They are very, very long. Okay. Because it is the one bone that is responsible for, bearing most of your body weight. Okay. That is why this bone is very thick and very long. Okay. Very thick bone. So this is the longest bone that is present, that is called as the femur bone. You can see here, correct? No, which is a long one. So the femur extends to 2 more bones called as tibia and fibula. Okay. So whichever the bone that you are feeling through with your hand, okay, which is like pointy, that is called as tibia. And the one that is laterally present is called as fibula bone. Is it clear? So you can touch with your hand the tibia bone. Okay. Whereas the fibula is on the lateral side. All right. So we have 1 humerus, 1 tibia, and 1 fibula. Okay. In each of the leg. All right. Don't think it's on both the leg. Next, after it extends, you come to your ankles, isn't it? So let's see what we have in our ankles. So we have tarsals. Okay. Tarsals are called as ankle bones, which are 7 in number. And we have metatarsals. And when we have phalanges. There we have carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. Here we have tarsals, metatarsals, and we have phalanges. All right. So ankle bones are called as tarsals. Okay. That one which is present in your, what do we call this? Palm region. Okay. A palm region of your legs are called as metatarsals. And then the fingers of your legs are called as metatarsals. Okay. So the number of digits, or the number of, are 14 in number. Okay. 14 in. My voice is clear. Okay. If my voice is clear, just let me know, please. If my voice and video is clear, make it fast. JNBRR, I think you are online. Can you please confirm if the voice and or video stability is there, please? Make it soon. Okay. All right. I will just keep continuing. All right. So if you find any technical issues, please put a message. Okay. That would be very convenient for both of us. All right. So now you might have always played with your knees, correct? No? Played in the sense you might keep moving a cup-shaped structure near your knee joint, correct? No? Near your knee, you keep moving sometimes, you can, when you're like relaxing in your sports ground, you might keep moving. You see that my part of my bone is moving near my knee joint. You might have played with it. And this is called as a patella. Okay, what is a patella? Patella is a cup-shaped structure, okay, or cup-shaped bone that usually covers a knee joint. Okay, so that is called as patella. Usually we call it as kneecap. Okay, so you remember, like whenever in sports we wear a cap, correct? No, when we are playing kabaddi or when we are into coco, okay, or when we are into long jump, we try to protect this particular bone, right? So that particular anklet that you wear to your knees, that is called as the kneecap. Okay, the reason why do you do is to protect your patella bone. Why? Because whenever you have a crash, or when you crash this to a stone, or if you fall down accidentally, usually this patella tends to crack. Okay, so this bone that you can feel as a cup, that is called as your kneecap. Okay, if a question is asked which bone covers your knee, okay, ventrally, the bone name is called as patella. You can see here, okay, the small cup shaped bone. All right, so this is called as patella. Okay, so now what are the girdles? Now you have two girdles. Okay, one is pectoral girdle, other one is pelvic girdle. So what are these girdles? Girdles are the point of attachment of your forelimbs and your hind limbs. Okay, so if you talk about your forelimbs, the forelimbs are articulated to your skeletal system. Okay, the major skeletal system through your pectoral girdle. Whereas, hold on, I got a message. Voice is clear and video as well. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, yeah. So when we talk about girdles, no people, yeah, we have two types of girdles. One is the pectoral girdle. Other one we have is a pelvic girdle. So as I was mentioning, pectoral girdle is you can just think as a shoulder joint where your forelimbs are connected to it. Whereas when it comes to pelvic girdle is your hip joints, okay, where your hind limbs are connected to. Okay, so as I said, these girdle bones provide articulation for your upper and lower limbs, or forelimbs or hind limbs respectively, to the axial skeletal system. Axial skeletal system is your main skeletal system. Is it clear? So now if you see your girdles, okay, each girdle is made up of two halves. Okay, so we will study about these halves individually. So let us talk about pectoral girdle. So pectoral girdle basically includes two important bones. Okay, so do you know this bone? The bone that is present, usually the people who work out, or the people who maintain diet, or people who are lean, or people anyways who are into beauty conscious. Okay, this bone is called as beauty bone or beautifying bone. Okay, the people who this bone is visible, so usually they think that okay, their body is quite fitter. It's getting fitter and fitter each day. Okay, that is simply told, in a common language. Okay, this is the beauty bone. All right. So this bone is called as what? You have a clavicle bone, and then you have another bone called as, see here, scapula. Okay, you have a scapula and you have a clavicle. So we have to study about these bones. Okay, first we'll talk about scapula. Okay, pectoral girdle. Under pectoral girdle, we'll start studying about scapula. Okay, all you have to do is push your shoulders behind. When you push your shoulders behind, you can see that there is a triangular shaped bone that is projecting outward in your dorsal surface. From your back, you can see that there is a kind of projection in a triangular shape coming out of your back. So that is nothing but your scapula. Okay, what is scapula? It is a triangular flat bone. Okay, where is it situated? It is situated in our dorsal part behind, right? Back of in our back. Where is it present? It is present between the second and seventh rib. Okay, between second and the seventh rib, that is where we have our scapula. Is it clear? Now, when we talk about scapula, so this dorsal flat triangular body, okay, it is slightly elevated, okay, ridges. Okay, these slightly elevated ridges. So this is called as spine. Okay, so this slightly elevated ridges, it projects and it provides a flat extended processes called as acronym. Okay, acromion. This is called as acromion. I'm sorry. So this acromion that is projected out of the scapula, okay, it provides a site for articulation of another bone called as clavicle bone. You can see here, right? It provides a site for attachment of clavicle bone. You can see here. Is it clear? So you just have to think that there is the scapula, and the scapula has an elevated ridge, okay, called as spine. So which projects as a flat extended process. Okay, this spine, okay, you can see here, this spine extend as a flat elevated surface, okay, elevated process called as acronym. So this acronym, okay, will provide the site for articulation of a clavicle bone. Is it clear? Fine. Next one, below the acronym, you can see here, below the acronym is, okay, is a site for attachment. Okay, this depression that is present below the acronym is called as glenoid cavity. Okay, this depression is called as glenoid cavity, and this glenoid cavity is a site where your arm bone, okay, or shoulder joint is attached. Okay, so the glenoid cavity is a site for articulation of your head of humerus. Is it clear? The head of humerus or your arm joint is present in the glenoid cavity. Is it clear? Or it forms a shoulder joint. Next, as I said, the clavicle, which is the beauty bone, is a slender bone which has two curvatures. Okay, you can see that it has two curvatures here, right? So this bone is also called as the collarbone, which supports your pectoral girdle. Is it clear, people? All right. So let us see further. So what you have to remember in your pectoral girdle has two halves. One is you have scapula. Other one you have your other bone that you have in your scapula is your clavicle bone, right? The scapula provides the elevated ridge called as spine, which projects and projects and processes a acronym. Acronym is a site for your clavicle bone's articulation. That is where your clavicle bone is articulated. All right. So when you talk about the acronym, below the acronym is a depression, which is called as glenoid cavity. So this glenoid cavity is a site where your shoulder joint is present. Okay. So that is humerus is attached to your pectoral girdle at the glenoid cavity, or that it forms a shoulder joint. Is it clear? Whereas when it comes to the clavicle is a long, slender bone which has two curvatures or two curves it has. Okay, it is also called as a collarbone. Is it clear? Next one. When it comes to pelvic girdle is also called as the hip bone, correct? No? So it is also made up of two halves. Okay, the two parts you can see here. Okay, this is one part of your clavicle bone. Okay, this is one portion of your clavicle bone, and this is the other portion of your clavicle bone. Is it clear, people? Okay, so this is one, this is two, and this entire portion is called as coxal bones. Okay, this entire thing is called as coxal bones. So if you take each coxal bone, if I take this each coxal bone, it is made up of fusion of three bones again. So this is one bone, and this is the second bone, and this is the third bone. So what are these three bones? The first bone is called as ilium, okay, and the second bone is called as ischium, and the third one and the third bone is called as pubis. Okay, it is made up of fusion of three bones. One is ilium, ischium, and pubis. Is it clear? So now this ilium, ischium, and pubis, okay, they together form one coxal bone. Okay, the coxal bones are fused together at a point called as, okay, near the pubic symphysis. They fuse together through a fibrocartilage. We'll talk about it. Okay. Now, the point of fusion. Okay, if you see that the two bones, there is a cavity. Correct? No. About the two bones, these two bones, where you have ischium and pubis, there is a cavity at the anterior surface called as acetabulum. Okay, this cavity is a site where your thigh bone, okay, where your thigh bone comes and attaches here. Is it clear? Acetabulum is a site, okay, which is formed because of the fusion of these two bones. Okay, so this acetabulum is a site where your thigh bone articulates or thigh bone is attached. Is it clear? When you take about the two coxal bones, see, you can see this is one coxal bone, this is the second coxal bone, as I said. So these two coxal bones have a site of attachment. Okay, they come and meet at the center, and this site of attachment is called as pubic symphysis. Okay, they come and attach at the pubic symphysis, which is made up of fibrocartilage or fibrous cartilage. Is it clear? Fine. So now we have finished our journey. understanding our skeletal system with respect to axial skeletal system as well as our appendicular skeletal system. And the next point we have to study is joints. Okay, no? So the skeletal system would not function for the movement or locomotion without the presence of joint. So we have various types of joints, okay, based on their plane of axis or based on what type of movement do they provide or do they not provide any movement at all. Okay. And the joints are the point of attachment between the two bones. Okay. So joints are basically what? They are the point of contact between two bones. Okay. Or between the bones and cartilage. Okay. So usually the bones function due to the force that is provided or the movement that is provided by the muscles. So as the muscles contract, the bones act like a fulcrum, okay, providing us the movement. For example, you might contract your biceps, okay, or you might move your shoulder joints, or you might walk, or you might bend your knee, or fold your legs upward, or laterally, or fold backward, correct? No? Or you can bend your backbone, front or back. So you have so many movements that are provided by your, bones, and all of it is possible because of the presence of joints. So based on the type of joints that are present, we can categorize them into three different joints. One is a fibrous joint, cartilaginous joint, and synovial joint. Okay. When we talk about fibrous joint, they are very rigid joints. They do not allow any type of movement. Okay. So you can find this type of joint in the case of skull. Okay. You remember that our skull contains, okay, these lines that I talked about, which are called as sutures. Okay. So these sutures between the two, cranial bones are nothing but dense fibrous connective tissues are present between them. Okay, which help in fusion of these flat skull bones. Okay, so as it provides these flat skull bones, you can just make a clear understanding. You just fold your two fingers like this, and you can see the stitching that is present. That is a similar fashion that your two flat bones of your skulls are attached through a fibrous connective tissue. So do you see any movement of your cranium? They're very rigid, isn't it? That is because of the presence of your fibrous joint. When it comes to your cartilaginous joint, okay, you can take an example of your backbone. Why? Because between two vertebral column or your vertebral column bones, so there is a disc, isn't it, which is made up of fibrocartilage. So this fibrocartilaginous joint helps in limited movement. Okay, we can only stretch our spine. We cannot bend it and twist it and turn. It's not possible. Okay, this movement, limited movement is allowed between the adjacent vertebrae, okay, which allowed limited movement for us. And the other one is synovial joint, right? Synovial joint is very, very important between two gel. See, the joints are not completely separate the joints with a certain distance and they're fluid. So this allows a considerable movement, and these are the of our skeletal system, right? So based on the angle of movement, okay, we can divide this synovial joint into saddle joint, pivot joint. Okay, so let us see, joint is also called as gliding joint, and they are present between our palm, correct? No, so they just glide. They don't actually move in any other axis except for gliding, correct? No. Next one is hinge joint. Hinge joint is your knee. Do you remember that you can only fold your knee up or down, correct? No. So that is hinge joint. The example is knee. Remember these examples. Okay. Condylar joint. Condylar joints are joints of wrist. If you take your wrist, you can rotate, okay, in one direction, clockwise, anti-clockwise, up and down, correct? No. So that joint in most also the axis is provided. That is because of the condylar joint, and the example is joints of your wrist. Okay. Next one is ball and socket joint. It is very famous example, right? Ball and socket joint is your humerus and pectoral girdle. That is between your thigh joint. So you can see, you can fold, you can fold upward, sideward, backward, isn't it? You can backward. That is your, for example, atlas and axis is your left and right. Your neck movement is restricted to left and right pivot joint, which happens in only one axis of joint based on their, what do you tell? Movement of axis. So the last portion of it is we have to study is the disorders of our skeletal system. So we'll start sooner and faster. So disorders of the skeletal system is with respect to our, muscles as well as bones. And the first example we have is myasthenia gravis. Okay, myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder. So that results in a neuromotor, okay, that affects the neuromotor junctions, right? So there is no proper correlation between our nervous system and the muscular system. So that leads to fatigue, weakness, and paralysis of the skeletal muscles, especially the facial muscles. You can see here how the face has fallen down, okay, and the dropping of the mouth corner and the eyebrows and the eyelashes falls down. So that is the example for myasthenia gravis. Remember, myasthenia gravis is an autoimmune disorder. So what is happening? It affects the neuromuscular junction, leading to fatigue of muscles, and you don't have the control of the muscles through our on the skeletal muscles, which leads to paralysis of them. Next one is muscular dystrophy. Muscular dystrophy is a progressive degenerative disorder. So it leads to degeneration of skeletal muscles, and this is due to the genetic disorder. And usually that leads to the people who cannot walk anymore, and they don't have any control over their skeletal muscles, and there is a progressive degeneration and weakness of the certain muscles, such as limbs in forelimbs and hind limbs, as well as in the back muscles, and they will be crippled and they cannot walk anymore. Okay. Next one is tetany. It is called as rapid spasms or wild contractions. You can see that the people immediately, because their muscles they're pulled backward usually. That is because there is a very low calcium in the body fluid. Okay, that usually they call it as kind of a stroke. Okay, so where their hands or the limbs or your facial muscles are pulled backward. Okay, this is called as tetany, and tetany is because of the spasms that are created due to the low calcium in the body. Next one is arthritis. Arthritis refers to the inflammation of joints. So that is because of the loss of the synovial space. Okay, when the synovial space is decreased because of the less synovial fluid, usually the joints keep swelling because of the friction that is created. So that is called as arthritis. And there are several reasons for arthritis, because of the low calcium in the diet, okay, low vitamin D, or because of the genetic disorders. Okay, several causes are there. Next one is osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is usually the decrease of bone mass. You can see here how thick the bone is and how thin the bone has become in the respective picture. So the decreased bone mass leads to fracture of bones, okay, or the degeneration of bones. So that leads to, this is because of the low estrogen levels, which is very common in the female, in the older or elderly females. Okay, osteoporotic bones. Okay, next one is gout. Gout is accumulation of uric acid. Okay, that uric acid crystals that occurs. So usually the people who are taking the medication for tuberculosis, or the people who have disorders in their metabolism, there the accumulation of uric acid will take place between the joints, that leads to inflammation and excruciating pain for them. So this is about gout. All right. So thank you, students. Here we come to the end of locomotion and movement. So we'll talk about the further topics about next chapter in next class. All right. So we have few minutes. You can use this for posting your doubts. Okay. Or you can carry your doubts for the next session. Okay. I will remain here for a few minutes. You can let me know. All right. Thank you. All right, students. I will see you in the next class. Have a nice day. Thank you. Bye-bye.